In this course, I'll teach you how to use AutoCAD Mac for architecture and interior design. This course is project-based where I show you how to create a complete project drawing set from scratch. We will start first by creating a floor plan, and then we will move to create a roof plan. Once we have the floor plan and the roof plan, we will start working on the exterior elevation and create all 4 directions. And then we will move to working on the sections, and finally we will wrap up by drawing the interior elevations. We will use everything from drawing commands to modifying commands. We will also be using layers throughout the project, and we will create groups and blocks. And finally, I will cover paper settings and printing our entire project set to a single PDF document. My name is Jay, and I'm the founder of JCAD. I make AutoCAD tutorials on YouTube, and I focus on AutoCAD for Mac. Let's dive in. The first thing I want to mention is basically the file or the base drawing that I'm starting this course from. So if I click Command N to start a new drawing, you will see this list, and here you will see a list of templates that come preloaded with AutoCAD. The one that I'm using is the one called acad.dwt, and the reason for that is that this one is meant to be used with inches and feet. You're welcome to use the ISO one if you are doing metric and can follow along with no problems. In case you are not seeing this window when you click Command N or you start a new drawing, what you can do is actually go to the Options window by typing OP on the keyboard and hitting the Return button. And then from here, you want to go to Application, and then you click on Reset Application Options. And when you do that, it will shut down AutoCAD, it will reset all the settings back to the default, and you should see that folder to be able to open that template. Now let's talk about the interface in AutoCAD. And the first thing I want to mention is don't be overwhelmed. You are definitely seeing a lot of buttons all over the place. You can see up and down, left and right, and we will go over it. And just for your reference, you won't be using all of these settings when you work with AutoCAD. Maybe you will use like 25 commands on a daily basis, maybe 50 if you're advanced, maybe 100 if you're an expert, okay? So let's get into it. So I'll start first from the very top. Here we have like quick settings that allow us to start a new drawing, to open a drawing, then to save and to save as. And here we have two important buttons. We have the undo button and then the redo button. Undo so you can go back a step if you drew something by mistake or you created something that you don't want to use. So that's the button. Then we have here a few commands related to printing. And then the following is the import and export, which we will cover later on. And then here, these are selection commands and like navigation buttons. The next ones are selection commands, different variations of them. We will use most of them as we go through this course. And then the last batch of commands, these are new commands. I think 2 of them are new. Shared drawing and the trace. I haven't used the trace yet. This is a new feature. Probably not cover it in this course, maybe in another video. The next thing is the File tab. So just like a browser or any other design software, for the most part, you have tabs where you can open multiple projects at the same time. So that's the File tab. You can hide it, you can keep it showing. I recommend you keep it, and so you can work with multiple projects at the same time if you need to. And then the next one we're going to look on the left side is the tool sets. So the tool sets, there's multiple tabs. There's the drafting tab that has 2D command, and then the modeling, which has 3D command. Now, I won't be covering any of the 3D commands. We'll only be working with the drafting command, but I figured it's good to point it out. For the light version, you don't have the modeling tab. You only have the drafting because AutoCAD Lite is only 2D commands. And then from here, you have a bunch of like drawing commands. We have commands related to the hatch, which we will be using. There's the block, we'll use that. The modify, we're gonna be covering almost all of these except for the table and the parametric commands on the bottom. And then where my picture is, there are like a few buttons to customize and make your own tool set. If you ever want that, so that's what it is. And I put myself back on the bottom left. The next one is on the right side. We have multiple tabs as well. We have the layers, we have the reference manager, we have the blocks manager. But we'll talk first about this one. So this one actually has 2 windows like layered on top of each other. So we have the layers, which we will be using. And then we have properties right under it here. And just so you know, you can actually take these out from their place. So I can click on this button, and then this will make this window floating around. For the most part, I'll just keep it docked, but figured it's cool for you to know that you have the option if you're using multiple monitors. And the same for layers, you can do that. Layers, it's handy to actually dock it out when you're creating numerous layers. So that's another thing to mention. Layers, just like other design software, you're able to organize your objects within different layers. We're going to be using that. And properties is basically like every object in AutoCAD has settings that define it, so we can modify it from the properties. We're going to be using that. Reference manager has to do with files that we can attach, like other files that we can attach to our drawing or our project. We're going to be using that. And then finally, the blocks is basically like objects grouped together under a block, and then you can use it to save time. Think, for example, a chair block or a sofa or a kitchen fridge or something like that. So we're going to be using that on how to create it and how to put some into your drawing. The next one on the bottom right is the status bar. So basically, there are 5 settings that I want you to make sure are turned on for this course for the most part to work, and then you're welcome to explore the other one. But basically, the 5 are these right here, the one that's called polar tracking, dynamic input, then we have group selection, we have object snap tracking, and then we have the object snap. So this area is called the status bar. And if for some reason you are not seeing any of these icons, you can click on the gear right here on the far right side. And then you can check like if you want to see it or not. So you can check like the ones, you can keep just the ones we are going to use. But for the most part, we also want actually, I just realized we do want to have the annotation scale on as well. So we're going to use that in the course. And then this one, we can turn it off, the annotation visibility. So the status bar is a collection of settings that allow us, like that help us as we are drawing. I'm going to talk about the ones that we are using. So don't worry, we'll cover that. It's just they're not relevant yet until we have something drawn up. So we will go over that. The next one is the command line, which you can see right here on the bottom in the center. And then from here, basically, you can type the command that you want to use. You can type line, or you want to type copy, for example. You can start like all the different commands from here. We won't be using it. You can hide it if you want or keep it, but just something to mention. The last portion I want to cover from the interface is on the bottom left, which is the model versus layout. So right now where we are by default in AutoCAD, we are usually working in the model space. I like to call it the drawing space. And basically, if you're using a mouse, let me zoom out, you will see this is kind of an infinite space where you can zoom out as much as you want, and likewise, you can zoom in as much as you want. So this is where we do everything related to the drawing. And then once we're done with creating our drawing or our project, then we would go to the layouts, which are here. Think of layouts as sheets. This is where essentially you would put the project on a sheet of paper, and then you can print it out or output it to a PDF or to an image, and that's basically how it works in AutoCAD. So the layout has a specific size. It can be like different paper sizes, which we are going to choose, and we're going to work with the layout. While the model, like I said, it's infinite. You only have one model space, but you can have as many layouts or pages or sheets. You can call it any of that, and that should mean the same thing. The last thing I want to cover about the interface in general is that in case you're not seeing any of these like tool sets or these palettes, I think that's what AutoCAD calls it, you can always go to the window tab from the top from here inside like the AutoCAD. And then from window, you can choose like to activate the ones that are missing. So that way you can bring it back in and you can continue working smoothly. So we covered the interface, and now we're going to talk about the units. And next, we're going to start with some drawing commands. So the units is one of like 5 or 6 settings that we're going to set up throughout the course. And basically, the units is like one of the things that we save in our template file that we will create as we create the course, basically. But it's an essential setting that you want to modify to make things work. And setting it up is pretty straightforward. This is mainly if you're using inches and feet. So basically, you would go to units by typing UN on the keyboard and then hitting the return button. And this will give us this window, which is called the drawing units. From here, the only thing we are going to modify is right under length and type. We will switch it from decimal to architectural. And the reason we're doing that is that AutoCAD by default, when we're drawing, or the default, like the template that we are using, it doesn't understand the inches and feet when we're typing, or we're using that unit. I'll just illustrate real quick. If I start a line command by typing L and I hit the return, I'm going to start by clicking the first point and then giving a direction with the cursor. And then let's say I want to type 12, for example, or like, for example, 15 inches. Okay, and I hit the return button. We'll get a red frame. We'll get like a red frame around the text, and it doesn't do the command. And the reason for that, because it doesn't understand or it doesn't recognize yet the inches and the foot symbol. So that's why we will go to units. And then from here, like I mentioned, we'll just switch this to architectural. Hit OK. And now if we do our test again and we type L, and then we click somewhere and we start, now we can do, for example, 8 feet, 4 inches, and hit return, and boom, now the units are working and we can keep going with this. Let's talk about drawing commands, and the first one I'm going to cover is the line command, which, like I mentioned, you can find it here. And then we will do the circle, the rectangle, we will talk about polyline, and then we will also do the polygon. So the line command, you can just click on it from here to start the command. And then the way it works, you can see like AutoCAD on the cursor, it's giving you guidance how the command works, and it actually does that for most of the commands in AutoCAD. So the way it works, you're going to specify a first point. I do that with the mouse. You can just click somewhere here, and then basically you want to give a direction of where you want to draw the line. I'm just going to move the cursor because it will follow the cursor to the right. And then once you have the direction, you are seeing a green reference line, which we will talk about. But here, once you have clicked the first point, you gave the direction, and now we're going to give the distance. So I will do, for example, 12 feet, and I will I'll put the foot symbol, and then hit return, and now we have our line. You will see AutoCAD keeps drawing. So now it's asking me like, where's the next line that I want to draw? If you want to stop it, just hit the return button, or you can click escape. The next one is rectangle, which can be found here, or you can type it basically on the keyboard. Like I mentioned, I'm going to type REC, and that's the shortcut for the rectangle command. And I'll click on the return button. Then I'll just specify the first corner point, and then you will need to specify the second corner point to place it. And then the command will stop. Now you're probably wondering, how can I give it specific dimensions? So we will go over that. So here's a rectangle. We'll click somewhere. And then here, like once you specify the first point, now you can type like how wide you want it to be. So for example, I will type 12, and you can see where it's highlighted in blue. That's where it's taking the value. And then if you want to define the height, what you will do is actually hit the tab button. So when you do that, AutoCAD will jump to the other value. And then from here, I'll choose 6 feet. You will see a lock on the first value. And then here, you will hit the return, and boom, we have a rectangle. In case you're wondering how to make the rectangle go like the opposite direction of how it went, let's start it again. So I will do another rectangle here. So let's say you don't want it to go to the right. Let's say you want it to go to the left. So I think it works with the cursor. I know it works by adding a minus, but let's try it anyway. So let's do 12, and then let's hit the tab. And then here I will do 6 feet, and then boom. And I think just with the cursor, that should work. I don't use the rectangle command often. Actually, never use it, almost only for very specific situations. But basically, with the cursor, you would direct where it would go. Like if you want it to the bottom left or to the top left, or you get the idea. Okay, so that was regarding the rectangle command. The next one is the circle command, which can be found right here, or we can type C, and that will start it. So I will use the shortcut and hit return. And then the way the circle, like the default circle command works, is that it will ask you for the center point of the circle first. So I'll click somewhere here, and then it will ask you for the radius. So now I'll just type 4 feet, for example. So that's the default one. In case you want to do a circle based on diameter, what you can do is go to the circle command, long press on it, and hold the button on the mouse, and you will get these options of like the different ways to draw a circle. So let's say if we want to do the diameter instead of doing like center radius, so this is the option. So you'd click somewhere, and then here, once you have the center, you'll define the diameter, let's say 8 feet, and that will give us like the same circle size. This one, 4 feet radius, that one is 8 feet diameter. They're both the same size. Now let's talk about the polygon, which you can access by long press on the rectangle. Then here you'll find polygon. You can always use the shortcut. And then here we're going to give it a number of sides. That's how it works. So we will type 5, for example, and then it's going to ask us for the center of the polygon. We'll click somewhere. And then we have two options on how to draw the polygon. You can either do inscribed in circle or circumscribed. Inscribed basically is going to be from the center of the polygon to one of the corners. The other option is going to be from the center to the middle point of one of the sides. And I'll show you that. And if this is not really interesting, you can always skip a little ahead to go beyond. But we only have one more drawing command, which is the polyline, and then we'll be done with this section. So the first option, let's click on it. So we already have the center, and like I mentioned, it's going to draw from the center to the corner. So we have that. And then let's do the other option. I'll start using the shortcut. So POL, polygon, and then here let's do 6 sides instead. We'll specify the center. We'll do circumscribe. So this one will do from the center of the polygon to the middle point to one of the sides, which are all equal, obviously. And then I'll click somewhere here. I'll just show you one last example just to show you this like based on a circle. So polygon, we will hit return again. We will do it based on the center. So inscribed in circle, this one will come out inside the circle, and then the other one will actually come out outside the circle, the circumscribed about circle. So here we go. I hope this makes sense too. Not that we're going to use it often. I don't think we're going to use polygon at all in this course, but I figured this is like just one handy thing to mention. The last drawing command we are going to go over is the Polyline command. There are more drawing commands, but these 5, like I feel it's just good to give you a good introduction. And for the rest, if we use any of them later, we will just cover them, okay? So Polyline. So Polyline is basically found right here, right beside the line. So line and polyline are for the most part the same. So polyline, you can type PL to start it, and I'll show you the difference in a second. And then the same, you start a point, you give it a length, you give it direction, and then boom, we have a line. And just like line, this one will actually keep on drawing. Like if I do like this, you will see it will keep adding sides basically to it. So that's the thing with polyline. Now, the difference between line and polyline, I'll just draw a line and I'll do like a similar shape where we have multiple sides like this. Okay, so polyline, the sides of the polyline are actually all connected. So if I select it by clicking on top of it like this, you will see that all the sides are actually connected and it resembles, or it makes up just one object essentially, and it's a single polyline. While these right here, each segment is a separate line. So this one is, although they're visually connected, they're not actually a single object. So you will see here we have 3 lines, and if I do a selection window to select all of them, and you can see from the properties we have a total of 9 lines, okay? So that's the difference between polyline and the lines. And you probably figured out that this is the command we're going to use to draw the walls. And actually, we are going to be using polyline throughout the course. Sometimes I'll use the line, but for the most part, it will be the polyline. Now I will talk about control points or vertices in AutoCAD. Essentially, all the objects or the elements we draw in our drawing has control points. So let me demonstrate. Let's select, for example, this line. You will see we have these blue squares on it, and I like to call them control points. AutoCAD calls it vertices, or vertex for a single one. So basically, these allow you to modify the geometry. So for example, for this line, if I click on this one, it will allow me to stretch it. If I click on the middle control point, it will allow me to move it. So depending on the control point, it will do different things. That's the first thing I want to mention. The second thing, it also depends on the geometry you are selecting. So for a circle, for example, I'm going to click on it and select it. And then here, if I basically like click this control point and move it, you will see it stretch the entire circle and it modifies the radius. So it works differently for a circle. Also, the center one will allow us to move it. For the most part, almost all of the center ones will move the geometry. And then for a polygon, you will see it works differently. It doesn't work like the circle. So if I click on this one, it will not scale the whole thing out or inside. If you're scaling it down, it will actually just modify the corners. And then you will see also we have these like blue rectangles. So this one will actually modify the whole angle of the polygon. One last thing to mention about these vertices or control points is that if you hover over one of them, like for example, I'm just going to put the mouse on top of it and lay there for a second, you will see we will get these options where we can stretch. Stretch is just to move it, which is what we were doing. You can add another vertex, so I can just like add another one. And then the last option is to actually remove the vertex, and you will see it here as well. For example, because this is a polygon, so we do have the option to convert this portion to an arc. Now let's talk about the modifying commands in AutoCAD. I will cover 3 of them first, and then I'll cover the rest as we are doing the project. But basically, we'll talk about like the essential ones, like the move, the copy, and the rotate. So you can find all of them on the left side, which are right here. So this is the move command. I believe this is the copy, and then rotate is right after it. There's a lot of modifying commands, and we will go almost like over half of them basically in the like throughout the course. So let's start with the move command. We can click on it, or you can type M, and then when you start the command, now it's going to ask you to select an object. So let's say I select this line, and then I'm going to hit return. So that selected the object, and it confirmed my like selection. And then now it's going to ask me to specify the base point for the moving. So I can click from anywhere, for example, from this point to this point, and that will move the line. Another way to do it, let's start it again, and we will select the line and hit return to confirm the selection, is I can tell it I want to move from this corner, and I'll select this corner or this control point as we talked earlier. And then from here, I can move it, for example, to this corner right here. There are 2 ways you can work with the modifying commands. You can either select the object first and then start the modifying command, or the opposite, which is what I was showing you. So right now I was doing the move command first, and then I'm getting asked to define or select the object. What you can do is actually select the object first and then start the move command. And then that way it already knows like what you want to modify, which is what I like to do. It's just good to know like the flow of how the commands work. And then here I can do like the middle point. You will see a green triangle, and we'll talk about these snap settings in a second. And then I can move this and place it, for example, somewhere here. So the move command is pretty straightforward, and the copy as well. So for example, let's say we select a circle and we select this rectangle, and then we do the copy command by typing CO. The same question, it's going to ask me from where you want the copy. So let's say I want to copy from this point, and then to ask you where do you want to copy, I'll just give somewhere here, like I'll just put it somewhere. So here we go. And the copy command will keep on working. So you just want to hit return whenever you're done with the copying. The next one is the rotate command, and to start it, we're just going to type RO. But I'm going to select the object first. Like I mentioned, you want to select the object first, and then I think it's better workflow. Select the object first, then start the modifying command. So I'm going to select this rectangle. We're going to type RO to start it. And then now we need to define or specify the base point for the rotation. So for example, I will click on this corner, and then AutoCAD will ask like to define the rotation angle, which you can define by just hovering over with the mouse, like to tell it visually how you want to rotate it. Or if you want, you can actually type the value. So for example, I want to rotate this 90 degrees, so I will just type 90, and then I'll hit return, and that just rotated the rectangle. Or if you want, you can add like more values. Let's start the rotate command again. Let's do another object. Let's do like, I think the polygon, let's do it here. So let's do rotate, and then from here, I will say I want 180, so that should flip it to the other direction. In the next lecture, I will cover the snap settings, and we will start by drawing the outline of our project, and we will start adding dimensions. See you in the next one.